Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Datola, and I'd like to welcome you to Passion for Perfection, a German obsession. Sponsored by VHF, whose dental and laboratory mills are German designed, engineered, and built. Apple CEO Tim Cook enlisted a German company to design and build all the furnishings for Apple's world headquarter remodeling project in Cupertino. When asked why he chose a German company, Cook simply said, "There is nothing in the world like German craftsmanship." So let's get started with our first segment, something we like to call Germansplaining. Germansplaining is the segment where I, as a non-German, explain to you the essence of the heart and soul of Germany. Would it make more sense if I was doing this because I was German? Of course, but then it wouldn't be Germansplaining. So last month, I flew to Germany to speak at a digital dentistry conference. And when I landed in the Frankfurt airport, I saw three guys in their mid-60s wearing Lederhosen and waiting for a flight. Now, if you haven't seen Lederhosen before, actually, Jonathan, put a picture up of a man in Lederhosen. Whoa, Jonathan, easy there. Not that much of a man. Back it off, like 30% less man, please. Yes, that's more what I was looking for. This is a farmer wearing traditional Bavarian clothes, leading his cattle down from the mountains. And, hey, Jonathan, I just had a memory come up. Didn't I once wear Lederhosen for Chairside Live back in the day? Yes! Now I know why that first picture looks so familiar. Hey, put up the first picture next to this one. And there it is. Wow, a striking resemblance. This is like one of those find the differences games between the two pictures, and it's nearly impossible to solve because the differences are so minute. Wow, this is a tough one. Oh, I'm the one wearing the hat. As fashion forward as they might seem, Lederhosen were originally designed as workwear since they were way more durable than traditional fabric outfits of the time. They were typically worn by riders, hunters, farmers, and those whose work revolved around outdoor activities. But the popularity of Lederhosen dropped in the 19th century when they were considered peasant clothes that were not fitting for modern city dwellers. In the 1880s, a resurgence set in, and the quintessentially Bavarian garment began being worn at festive occasions rather than work. Now that I'm back from Germany, sometimes I think about those three old guys wearing Lederhosen in the Frankfurt airport. I think about how they took such pride in their way of life, and I remember thinking, I wish I had a piece of clothing that always had a dedicated knife pocket and a drop front, otherwise known as a codpiece. Now it's time for an installment of our phenomenal conversations. See what I did there? Where we spent a few minutes talking to a leader in digital dentistry. We are privileged to have with us today Dr. Michael Scherer, a board-certified prosthodontist from Sonora, not Sonoma, California. And if I came up with an I Heart Dentures bumper sticker, I'm pretty darn sure Michael would put it on his car. Michael, thank you for agreeing to spend some time with us today.
Thanks. It's an honor and privilege to be able to be here on your program and presentation.
You know, Mike, I've seen you speak twice now. The last time was recently in Germany, and I'm pretty sure nobody loves dentures as much as you do. Maybe there's a few other prosthodontists, but there's probably few GPs. It's a real thing with you. You really enjoy helping these patients, and you like the process, correct?
You know, digital dentures is an amazing way to go, and just plain dentures are amazing as well, just because there's something about being able to do that service for a patient that really is just a really rewarding thing. And on top of that, you know, besides the warm and fuzzies, you know, you can be extremely, you know, successful with dentures in a clinical practice. And even if you're a heavy PPO provider and your reimbursement is low, you know, the thing that comes with doing more dentures is more implants. So the reality is that a lot of people will ignore dentures, like, who wants to do dentures? But in all reality, the more dentures you do, the more implants you do. So digital dentures and regular dentures and implant over dentures then also feeds into lots of other things like, hey, that grandparents got grandkids and all this stuff. So to tell you the truth, I don't know, maybe it's just I love dentures, but I just love patients, and I just happen to be pretty good at dentures. So it's been a real boon for my practice.
Well, it's interesting because it feels like dentures in particular hadn't really had a lot of technology thrown at them for maybe the last 150 years. You know, it seemed like we were still doing the same things with our impressions and then hoping to get it centered on the ridge and have it fit. Tell me a little bit about your digital workflow doing these digital dentures, and what are some of the benefits to the patients?
What happens is so much of our practices nowadays are really consumed by the digitization of what we're doing. You can't open up a magazine or a journal and be able to really kind of look at anything these days without somebody trying to push or do something on the digital side, whether it's a clinician or a company. What happens is that the public is really starting to understand this, and a lot of people are coming to me in my clinical practice because of the way that I handle things digitally. So what happens is that, if we focus on traditional dentistry, like crown and bridge dentistry, being able to go ahead and do, single crown and different procedures with a digital process is a wonderful thing. Just because what happens is that it can be extremely rewarding, as well as really beneficial to the practice and the patients, because you could turn around cases faster. But ultimately, what happens is that if you're looking at the digital denture workflow, unlike crown and bridge workflow, which is so digital, it's crazy, dentures is still a little bit slow to the digital process, because there is still so much of that classic workflow that is necessary for the denture process. And arguably, some people will say, you have to go full digital for dentures, or else you're not doing digital dentures. Or some people say you have to go full analog, the complete, 180 of that. But in all reality, I'm a firm believer that there's a middle ground where you take a little bit of the digital side, a little bit of the analog side, and mash them all together. And what I do in my practice is that I focus in on using the best of both worlds. The analog process of maybe impression making, because you get really good borders, great impressions, and all of that stuff. Sure, we can do digital scans in the mouth, but there's a lot of limitations associated with that. And then what we can do is leverage the good old-fashioned analog technique that's been around for 70, 80 years of these original hackers of dentistry, the original cosmetics, dentists. We're denture people. They figured out a lot of great techniques, and then all we need to do is sprinkle some digital along the way. And that's kind of what I believe in, taking those traditional methods and then applying the digital to them.
I think I heard you say when we were in Germany, and I see your R5 VHF mill behind you, I think I heard you say that you have that mill on some days running 24/7, and that you spent 7 years looking for an in-house laboratory technician and finally found one. Talk to me a little bit about having a mill that works overnight. This seems like having the world's most amazing employee who's just going to sit and work all night long. I'd like to hear more about that.
Well, certainly when you're thinking about the average busy clinician, do we have times in our day between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. or whatever your hours may be to be able to sit down at the bench and wax up a denture, or, sit there and dip copings to do crowns? No, that just is absolutely crazy. Now, maybe sometimes I'll do stuff in between patients. I get all of that. But what happens is that the vast majority of the time, before I had a technician in my office, I was doing a lot of this myself after hours, spending time after patients were gone. And man, I tell you, you lose a lot of time in the day doing that. And, it just happens to be I'm married to a lovely lady who's an orthodontist who is pretty understanding of me spending a few extra hours after work. But what happens is she even looks at me, she goes, "All right, Mike, we got to figure out something, because we got to do something here." And she said, "Can you figure out a way that can make your life a little easier, where you can still do the same work, just not have to be stuck in the lab all day?" And I said, "Sure. I might need to go ahead and think about automation, a different technology for me to be able to go ahead and do the same workflow of what I can with my crowns or digital dentures in a way that I can just go ahead and set it and quote, forget it." I don't know if that's like a patented phrase or something, that I can't
Pretty
use.
sure it is.
Yeah, I probably can't say that. But what happens is why don't we just say set it and go home and relax? So what happens is that if I can go ahead and get my technology to work overnight for me, it doesn't require overtime. And I don't have to pay in healthcare benefits for it or something of that nature. So my goal with integrating milling originally in my office is I had a dry mill that was worked really good for just making single unit crowns, like I was showing you earlier. Maybe like a single crown just like this. But then I wanted to get a wet mill. So a wet mill allowed me to go ahead and mill titanium. So I can make titanium abutments and do all those things in my office. But then a little kind of birdie in my head said, meaning my wife, she said, "Hey, by the way, figure out something that you can also automate after hours." And so what happened was I was able to find a milling machine that allowed me to go ahead and let me just open this up. It allowed me to go ahead and set 10 different pieces of what we call pucks or discs. So that way, when I go home, I literally have the machine working. Then I come back in first thing in the morning, and this is a crown that I just milled just a few moments ago. And I go ahead, and now I have a crown ready to go. And it's in 10 of these things are ready for me for that next morning. And it makes it for a very simple operation because, in a busy clinical practice, if I can have most of the work done at night, plus less force and pressure on my compressor, meaning it's not running while I've got patients I'm doing crown procedures on, all of a sudden I'm like, where'd my pressure go? At 9 p.m. at night, I don't have to worry about my pressure dropping. So it makes for pretty simple integration.
And it's great because, as you mentioned, it'll hold the 10 discs and it'll run it all autonomously all night. It'll switch back and forth between the wet and dry on its own. So it allows you to really take full advantage. And it sounds like you are, because it'll mill composite, plastic, wax, zirconia, titanium, chrome, cobalt, whatever you want to put in there. And it sounds like you're taking full advantage of that. Was that a digital denture behind you that I saw for a second?
Sure is. So we went ahead and just to kind of show you, I've got a denture sitting right here. This is a mill denture out of my milling machine. And it's pretty simple because essentially what you're doing is you're milling the denture base pink and then milling the teeth. And then these are both in the disc holder. So when my technician comes in the morning, he opens up the machine and starts to go to town. And what happens is that, say you're a clinician, and you say, I don't want to have a technician in my office. It wasn't that way. It took me almost, 6 years to find a technician in my office, and I was using my dental assistant. So my dental assistant was trained to come in, pull these things apart, then start working on it to get it ready for me. And I was helping a little bit more with my assistant than a technician, but nowadays I just have my technician do everything for me, and it's really quite amazing.
Yeah, I know the dentists who say they don't want to practice with a technician in their office. Those are only dentists who have never practiced with a technician in their office. And as you know, I used to practice in a building with 800 technicians, and I love having all these people. Yeah, to come and help out and do whatever you need and do it overnight. But you've kind of accomplished that with your R5. It's like having an extra employee or two right there to help you out. Well, Michael, thank you so much. I want to encourage our viewers to go to learndentistry.com, one of your websites. And there's a great article about how nobody could exactly copy my 52-year-old denture until I went and saw Dr. Michael Scherer. And it really points out how the digital denture workflow can be helpful to you, but more importantly, to your patients. Michael, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Passion for Perfection is brought to you by VHF, designed, engineered, and built in Germany. VHF takes their motto seriously, creating perfection. Their obsession with creating the perfect machines, tools, and software is to enable their customers to pursue creating clinical perfection for their patients. Their open system allows you or your dealer to pair your VHF mill with the best scanner for your practice. And by manufacturing the mills and the tools themselves, and always including CAM software at no additional cost, VHF allows clinicians to own a state-of-the-art complete CAD/CAM system at about half the cost of other popular CAD/CAM solutions in the market. Go to VHF.com to see how you can begin creating perfection too. That'll wrap it up for this episode. So on behalf of myself, Practice Passion, and VHF, how about we shut the front door and start milling?